of the finished product, Mangrove?
It was fine. Steve is to be congratulated on getting the stuff on the big screen and using indeed his reputation and his skills to get the BBC to do that. Looking forward to seeing the other films as well.
Yes, so am I. So am I. And your memories then of the early 70s, Mangrove, and what Britain was like, and especially the relationship with the police back then?
Okay, I sit in a privileged position. I live in Latwood Grove. I've lived here since 1958. Latwood Grove is neighbouring. It's just a couple stones thrown away from the All Saints Road, where the Mangrove was. I knew Frank Critchlow. I knew all the major players in Mangrove 9. I was just half a generation younger than Marcus and Roden and Althea. I know Althea as well. I was really impressed that Steve decided to make Althea in a way the star. Nobody's the star. I mean, the big character that we attached to, that we identified with, that we followed in there. Yes, there was a bit of darkness, but I thought it was great to put it there. Because she was outstanding at the time and is outstanding now. She was somebody who was doing at that time what today bright young people call intersectional politics. She was across trade unionism struggles, womanist struggles, black struggles, international struggles. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And she knew what she was coming out of. One of the things that Steve doesn't quite have in his film, it's not surprising, don't do with everything, is the darkness and out there when they spoke, were people who were coming out of traditions, live activist traditions in the places in which they were born. Trinidad and Tobago, an ex-colony. In that time, all over the world, were coming out of British colonialism. So one of the things they had, and I'm not sure it came from Steve's film, is that there was a kind of buzz, there's a lift, there's a high to what they were doing. They were aware of this. They were part of a movement to liberate huge sections of the globe from racist colonialism, racist imperialism. It was happening all over the place. That you didn't quite get that in the film. It's just these black folks in the Grove who are uppity and and standing up for their rights and dignity and so on. But actually, what they're doing, they are aware that it is drawing to a much bigger global movement at the time.
What do you feel the legacy has been? It's a question I've been asking all afternoon, but just 3 years ago, David Lammy published his report into the criminal justice system, and especially how black people are treated through the criminal justice system. And it makes for depressing reading. So what is progress?
It's depressing until and unless you realize that one of the reasons that even his asking for the report is in response to a set of disturbances. And those disturbances are testimony to the fact that people are making a struggle. You can be depressed about the fact that we're still fighting the things we were fighting back in the 1970s and 80s in Britain, fighting them now. We've moved from a time when the Special Patrol Group was terrorizing people in Brixton, amongst other places in the country, which caused riots in the early 80s, to a place now where we have something called the Territorial Police Group or Support Group, which is actually now policing what we're calling it is to exclusion zones, today's ghetto, so to speak, in various sustainable what's happening there. So that feels as though you're going around in circles, but the point is that people are joined in struggle, and many other things have changed about the way in which we're making that struggle. Our resolve, the authority we have in doing it has changed. Yes, indeed. It's annoying, it's irritating, it's maybe dispiriting to find that it's not easy to knock this racism on the head. But actually, there is also, I think, I want to insist, there's a kind of high to knowing that we're on the side of writing history.
Yes, and the narrative arc is long, but it bends towards justice.
Correct. Yeah.
We can see where there has been progress. We've only got a couple of minutes left, Colin. What emotions did it bring up in you watching Steve McQueen's film?
You see, it's difficult to ask somebody who's me about that, what emotions it brings up. I spent all my time trying to identify the figures, yes? The kinds of language, the details.
But I know that you know the academic, I know that you know the numbers, I know that you know the policy. That's why I asked you specifically about the emotion.
But I live it still, yes? I mean, it's not just, I don't have an academic interest in this, merely. I have lived it. I've lived through the whole of this business watching it. I wanted to see, as I looked at it, you know what I wanted? Not emotions, but I wanted more Steve will probably back me, need more. There is a history of British colonial racism that is context to that film. There is a history of UK state racism in the 20th century that is context for that film. There is a history of policing of black people in this Britain that's context to that film. Okay, 9 years after the Mangrove 9 people were doing their stuff, I was part of groups of people who started an organization called BASH, Black People Against State Harassment. If you look at the agendas for those meetings that we were having then, they echo the agendas that Black Lives Matter are making now in 2020. This is not cause for me to be depressed. This is demonstration that there's continuity. There are people now working with Boris Johnson who say that those of us who go on about racism and having to do anti-racism are people who are encouraging victimization, victimhood, which is a nonsense. Okay. So when I saw the film, when I made those connections, I'm aware of the fact that what they want to call perception is actually hard experience.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you. We're going to leave it there. But Colin Prescott, Chair of the Institute of Race Relations and an academic and filmmaker, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is
Online.
This is
highly effective in preventing infection with coronavirus. Interim results of clinical trials suggest the jab developed by the American firm Moderna is nearly 95% effective. Downing Street says talks are being held with Moderna about access to the vaccine. The company says it could provide substantial quantities by spring if a deal's agreed. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, welcomed the announcement.
We've been through a lot in the last 7 or 8 months, and this is light at the end of the tunnel. Obviously, we've got to go from where we are now to rolling it out, and that's why I've written to the Prime Minister to say we need a clear strategy, we need to pull everybody together, best of Britain, if you like, and I want to work constructively with the government on that. I think the public want to see all political parties, all politicians pulling together.
It's been confirmed that Boris Johnson is among 7 Conservative MPs who are having to self-isolate after a meeting on Thursday. The Prime Minister said he was feeling fine after spending about 35 minutes with the Tory MP Lee Anderson, who later tested positive for coronavirus. 2 political aides who attended the meeting are also having to self-isolate. A senior officer at British Transport Police has accepted the force let the public down on the night of the Manchester Arena bomb attack. Giving evidence to the inquiry, Assistant Chief Constable Sean O'Callaghan agreed mistakes had been made, including having no police officers in the arena foyer where the bomber Salman Abedi was waiting before the explosion.
Did we let the people down? It was our responsibility to police that arena, and that attack happened when we was policing it, and there was police officers deployed or planned to be deployed to the site of the attack, and they were not there. So in that term, yes.
A British diplomat has been hailed a hero after diving into a river in central China to save the life of a drowning student. Stephen Ellison, who's 61 and Consul General in Chongqing, rescued the 24-year-old woman from a fast-flowing river on Saturday. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale has the details.
The student, who hasn't been named, slipped on rocks and fell into the river. Within seconds, she was face down in the water and unresponsive. Mr. Ellison, who happened to be passing, took off his shoes and jumped in. She was unconscious, she wasn't breathing, and for a short time we feared the worst, he told the BBC. But after turning the woman over and lifting her face clear of the water, she started breathing again, and he swam backwards to the side. There, Mr. Ellison held onto a lifebuoy that had been thrown by passers-by, who helped lift the woman to safety. "I'm sure someone else would have jumped in," he said. "I was just the first to get in."
The Hollywood stars Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds are set to be the new owners of National League Club Wrexham after the Supporters Trust voted overwhelmingly to back their takeover bid. 98% of those who responded to a ballot were in favour. The actors have pledged to turn Wrexham into a global force, and it's thought the takeover could lead to £2 million being invested in the club, which has been in fan ownership since 2011. BBC News at 3:03.
BBC Sounds. There is a saying that goes, every day is a learning day. I'm Eve, a rapper, TV presenter, businesswoman, and also a dreamer. A seeker of experience and someone who's always learning. Join me as I talk to Paloma Faith, Henry Holland, Swiss Beats, and other remarkable guests to find out how they get the most out of life.
I feel that everybody should understand the business that they're in. If you're in music business, you should understand the music business.
Yeah.
Don't just freestyle it and depend on other people.
Constantly evolving, only on BBC Sounds.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live, available on the BBC Sounds app. Nahal Arthanayaka. Must watch from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Hello, welcome to Must Watch, where Hayley Campbell, Scott Bryan join me to look at the biggest TV and streaming releases of the week. What are we looking at this time, Scott?
Well, like it or loathe it, I'm a Celebrity is back on our screens, this time from a castle in Wales. More than 12 million people watched the first episode. I know.
That's big in a game.
Huge. Yeah, Hayley and I will be reviewing the first episode and we'll also be chatting to the host of the new spin-off Daily Drop, Vic Cope.
And Hayley, what else have we got?
We're also looking at the new anthology series from the brilliant film director Steve McQueen. It's collectively called Small Axe, and the first one, Mangrove, aired on BBC One last night, so you might have already seen this one. We're also looking at a slightly mad miniseries starring Ethan Hawke about John Brown and his gang of abolitionist soldiers.
And let us know all of the shows that you are watching on download. You can just email us at mustwatch@bbc.co.uk with your recommendations, which I've been having loads of recommendations from people because I just put on Twitter that over the weekend I finally finished all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones.
No, quickly.
Yes, in about 3 weeks I did 8 seasons.
I love that you finished it and you didn't peter out.
No.
Well done.
Oh, no, I went in and I actually liked season 8, which I know horrifies a lot of people. But I felt really sad for Daenerys Targaryen. But I won't give anything away. But I actually feel, in televisual terms, bereft. Because there's nothing else I want to watch. I've actually contemplated watching it again. I have thought
Doesn't
this.
it all just become this massive kind of melted, wiry mess plot-wise in your head? Like I had to when I was watching
always
the
was.
show. Oh, it was. But I
Well,
always
seasons
had
1 to 6 were.
But I always had to look on my phone to see where we were in each episode and who was speaking to who and who was actually in charge of who, because I found myself tied up in knots with that show sometimes, plot-wise.
Completely, and that's, I think, why you have to watch it twice. Because I think when you're waiting every week for a new episode, in those 7 days with everything else that you're doing and you've just lost the thread of it. Whereas if you watch 2 or 3, 4. If you sometimes go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning because you're just watching Game of Thrones, then you actually begin to understand it and see just how brilliant it is and how interwoven it is. And there are battle scenes in it, for instance, the Battle of the Illegitimates, I shall call it, which is one of the greatest battle scenes you will see on a screen, whether it be cinema or television. It's superb.
Was that the battle where it was so dark you couldn't barely see it?
No, that's the battle against the White Walkers, which is, that's totally mad. I think there are clubs in Berlin that are like that.
I know what was going on.
I'm totally geeked out. So much so. This is how much I've disappeared down the rabbit hole of Game of Thrones. I've now started listening to the soundtrack. Wow. I actually put the music on and just listened to the music while going to bed last night.
Well, I always find that it is one of those themes that you can never get rid of. Once a new season of Game of Thrones started, that was in my head for the next 10 weeks.
But what is the theme of Game of Thrones? Is it just like mandolins and whistles? I mean,
I'm not going to sing it, but I mean, it's the actual guy who did it, who's a German composer, who was actually kind of a protege of Hans Zimmer. His soundtrack, if you go across it, there's this one song which I'll recommend called Light of the Seven, which is so brilliant.
I can't believe how deep you've gone.
I've gone so deep. Light of the Seven.
You can't get out now.
I can't. I genuinely feel as though I need to go and watch the whole 8 seasons again, because I just don't feel anything on television will satisfy me like Game of Thrones did.
What about watching True Detective again? Those are your guys.
Yes, I could do that. I might start doing that again.
I can't
Another
wait for you.
good thing.
Season one.
I can't wait for you to get into The Crown in about 8 years' time. That's going to be phenomenal. When you'll be telling us like, have you been watching The Crown?
Yeah,
It's so good.
I was
King
never,
of the zeitgeist.
Clout chasing, I believe the young people call it. I'm totally clout chasing. So the thing is, I only watched The Crown because Tobias Menzies, who plays the Duke of Edinburgh, was on the show. And I thought, this is actually really good. And Gillian Anderson, wow.
She's so good.
Sublime.
Oh, my gosh.
Also, is it Emma Corrin who plays Diana?
Oh, yes, who's been everywhere in the press. I think she's on the cover of GQ.
Yeah, I thought she had a perfect
glamour.
combination of shyness and awkwardness. The way she just stands is so good.
Piers has said, see if you can get all seasons of Snowfall, BBC Two, all about the crack epidemic in LA in the 80s. That sounds uplifting. Just in time for a festive season, Piers.
Sounds like one of my recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. Stephen McGill said, bereft of something to watch after Game of Thrones, try The Bureau. French spy drama of the highest order. 5 seasons will probably see you through to... Stephen, are you asking me to read TV? You're asking me to read on the TV? I don't watch TV to read.
Reading. I'm a big fan of reading because it forces you to put down your phone for an hour, because you know what it's like. You get into a binge-worthy series. Title show means that you can't get distracted, otherwise you have no idea what's going on.
That's very true. And to be fair, I'm making fun of Stephen, but I loved Gomorrah. I watched all seasons of Gomorrah, which is, of course, in Italian. So I do read TV sometimes, Stephen, but not very often. But I do like to read TV once in a while. Okay, I'm not sure why I go into that accent every time I talk about subtitles. It's so racist to people in the South. Okay, a lot of people will have binged season 4 of The Crown this weekend, as we were just talking about it. So we actually released a must-watch special on BBC Sounds where I just mentioned I interviewed Tobias Menzies, who plays Prince Philip, and we reviewed it on last week's Must Watch. So skip back on the BBC Sounds stream for that. Scott and Hayley, just give us a quick reminder of what you thought.
I am not a Crown watcher, but I like this series because of the period of history it's covering. And also, as we said, Gillian Anderson is just incredible.
I think it's a return to form. I felt the third series was kind of losing its way, partially because of the storylines they chose, partially because maybe the time that they were looking at. But season 4 just... Oh, it's just so great. And so great to have a show that is closer in our all collective memory, because then you start thinking about where you were when these stories happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. When are they stopping this? Are they going to get to... Are they going to get to Prince Andrew and Epstein, do you think?
No. So there's 2... No.
That'd be my favourite.
Because I'd love to
series.
see the dramatisation of the Newsnight interview. That would make
Who would
for...
play Mateless? Who would play Emily Mateless?
Emily Maitlis would play Emily Maitlis.
Oh, that'd be so good.
That'd be so meta. Russ Williams and I, even though I've never met him, he and I have just fallen out because he's just tweeted me to say, what is the matter with you? Game of Thrones is by such a margin the worst TV programme ever. Ever?
I'd say he doesn't watch enough TV. If you think that's the worst, you should see some of the stuff Scott and I have to
Russ,
see.
can I suggest you go to BBC Sounds, look over all of the... Okay, just because Hayley's brilliant at this, just to remind Russ of something. What is a programme you've watched through Must Watch that has actually made you angry? You hated it so much. That Al Pacino one. That Al Pacino where they did the chess thing in a concentration camp, and it was so outrageous.
Hunters.
That they
Hunters.
Yes.
Scott and I hated that show, not just because it was terrible, but because it was just historically bizarre, and it made me so angry that Scott and I were texting each other during it, saying, "Have you got to this bit yet?" No.
Yes. So Russ Williams.
I'm
there
glad
you go.
that one sunk without a trace.
Yes, no, it really did, didn't it? He said, how can anyone enjoy people being feral and shouting, "Ah!" all the time? It's beyond me. It is pure horrible awfulness. Disaster of a drama. Oh, Russ, come on, man. Serious? Come on. Can't say that. It's so good. I think it's probably the best TV programme ever. That's why I'm just putting it out there. Anyway, Kim says, I wonder why people are so keen to relive the past. This is talking about The Crown. It really wasn't very dramatic when you were there. Oh, wow. Scott, what did Andy have to say about it on the blog? Go on,
Andy.
Go and track it down.
So I just flicked my clipboard. I've got a clipboard in front of me because I'm very old school. Andy says, great series which shows the absurdities, hypocrisies and turmoil of the royals brilliantly. Outstanding writing and acting in all 3 series so far. Claire Foy and Olivia Colman have both been excellent, and I can't wait to see how Gillian Anderson plays Thatcher. Oh, you're in for a treat.
Prince Philip comes across really well in this, I think, don't you? Stoic.
Yeah.
It comes across quite differently to how we see it in
Yes.
newspaper articles.
That doesn't necessarily mean positively, but Vice Minister said that he relied into 1987 to 90. Interesting. He said that he watched it so many times he started dreaming about it. Scott, what did Mac have to say about The Crown?
Mac had to say, we enjoyed the first 2 series but found Olivia Colman totally unwatchable. There were only a few series between 2 and 3, so I don't understand why they just don't age the original cast up. And yeah, there's a bit of a hurdle you have to go and overcome, when the show sort of switches. But I find that you get over that really quite quickly. Talking about people having complaints, there was a brilliant letter in the Daily Telegraph today where a viewer sent a letter in saying, as a staunch royalist, my wife and I decided to watch a new series of The Crown so we can pick apart the inaccuracies and untruth. It says, we were unprepared for the depths of injustice on display, particularly towards Prince Charles. The show's portrayal of his fishing techniques was utterly unjustifiable. To imagine that any self-respecting fisherman would allow his line to touch down so catastrophically is bad enough. But then to suggest that such a cast could result in the landing of a fine salmon is tantamount to gross, almost criminal negligence.
That's incredible.
Now that is a review. Now that
our reviews are rubbish.
Is a review. I mean, you've got to focus on a moment and
Actually,
really take it apart.
Scott and I frequently point out inaccuracies with bus routes in
Yes.
anything shot
Oh,
in
London.
kind of review that you get out of me.
See, this is the thing. I'm wondering whether Must Watch should switch from the whole show to particular scenes. And then people can extrapolate from that particular scene what they want to watch. I think we need to get geekier on this, quite frankly. What did Jim have to say, Hayley, about The Crown?
Jim said, I thought Olivia Colman was excellent in the last season, and I look forward to seeing more. I didn't see any critique of her performance other than opportunistic digs at her personal politics. One such grasping at straws critique of how she saluted, which, as a technical issue, is a failing of direction rather than acting. And another about how she has a lefty face. It's very specific. Very specific.
Josh Hill. ITV says that 12 million people watched episode 1, which, like many others at the moment, has had to make many big changes in relation to the pandemic, hence why it has been relocated to Wales. Yet they kept the clock telling you what time it is where they are currently filming in the bottom left-hand corner. Of course, disregarding the fact that Wales is in the same time zone as the rest of the UK. In the first episode, the celebrities...
Yeah, but the Australian audience needed to know that, Scott.
They really did. In the first episode, the celebrities had to abseil down a cliff and answer questions about themselves to retrieve their backpacks. Former Firefly presenter Victoria Derbyshire was asked this question by fellow celebrity Vernon Kay.
Are you ready? Yeah. The number of years Victoria presented her 5 Live radio show.
10 years.
Followed by Holly's age when she first competed in the Paralympic Games?
I was 14.
14! That's not right, Victoria.
Try 16.
Yes!
Yes!
Wow.
There's a big
Dramatic.
difference between 10 and 16. How do you miss that?
Didn't know this time she spent at 5 Live. Is that what she answered wrong?
I think so. Maybe it just was so much fun, it just went very quickly.
Maybe she doesn't have them carved into the wall like she's in prison, like you did.
Yeah, she'd just get it tattooed on your thigh. I thought every presenter did that. At least that's what they told me when.
Yeah, the BBC contracts are really.
It's the barcode they put in the back of my neck, which is really worrying. Okay, Scott, there is a new spin-off show this year to accompany the main one. Tell us about this spin-off show, Scott Bryant.
Yes, it is called. Thank you very much, Nahal Arthanaika. It's called The Daily Drop on ITV Hub. Earlier today, Hayley and I spoke to its presenter, Vic Hope. She told us why people really needed
big. And I was so happy as soon as I heard those first drum beats, those jungle drums. It's like you get shivers up your spine. I was like, yes, it's back, and I'm so here for it.
Speaking of it being funny, I noticed Shane Ritchie got around the fact that he didn't know everybody's names by passing the walkie-talkie around. I'd love to know when they all get together, when they meet each other, like, are there conversations off to the side where they're like, who's that guy? I don't know who that guy is. Do you ever see that?
I mean, you just seem so like. I went on Strictly. I did not expect anyone to know who I was. And I was like, you can ask. It's absolutely fine. I totally get it. But yeah, I love that he used that as a little technique, and I feel like I'm gonna somehow employ that too. You know, when you go to a party, or well, that's been a while, but you know, when you go to any kind of social gathering or a work thing, and you know you've seen that face before, but you just cannot put a name to it. I'm going to somehow, it's sort of like the equivalent of giving them your phone and being like, oh, can you just give me your number again? Or just, like, how exactly do you pronounce it? But he turned to Mo, and obviously he knows exactly who Mo Farah was. That was more a tool to get into the others' names. He went, what's your name? And Mo just went, it's Mo. I think he genuinely thought he was asking his name.
I would just say MBE after my name after anybody, because that was one
incredible.
Of the standout moments from last night.
Yeah,
I did like how Ant was picking up on that. Didn't just let it lie.
I think it's hard not to, because Twitter picked up on it, didn't they? But it's not like Mo Farah was like, oh, Sir Mo Farah, which presumably he has to put on all his posts. Do you know what? You know when you get your post, it must say Sir instead of Mister. That's mad.
What I also loved was just Jordan North being absolutely terrified of absolutely everything. I could just imagine there being a producer off the side with a clipboard basically going, okay, he doesn't love small spaces, tick. He doesn't love heights, tick. He doesn't love abseiling, tick. And of course, over the first challenge, he's had to abseil from a great height. And then on tonight's episode, he's going to be essentially in a very claustrophobic place full of snakes. I just wonder why you would want to put yourself forward for something like that, knowing that's going to be what you're going to have to be subjected to.
He didn't even like basic toilets. He kept saying everything was basic.
He did. I love Jordan North so much. I'm so happy he's in there. Obviously, I know him from Radio 1. And Why? What are you going to do when you've got there's going to be 30 snakes inside with him? 30. And he's got to put the code to a safe in, right? Like, is he going to vomit on the snakes? Like, is he going to do worse than vomit on the snakes? What is worse than vomiting on the snakes? I don't know.
He's going to pass out, and the camera's just going to be focused on his sleeping face. What is the daily drop? How does it all work? What are we going to see?
We are in London, so we're not actually at the castle, but we have this amazing studio turret. We have 3 fantastic guests every single morning to just fill you in, to just continue the conversation, to just have a good gossip, completely dissect everything from the night before, and sort of like Jordan North, bring it all back up again.
So, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is back. Is it the tonic we all need, Scott? At a time when we are all kind of stuck inside, not being able to have a kind of life, watching other people stuck inside, not really having to have a life. Is that what we need? Yeah.
I think, like, we always, Hayley and I need to have a warning whenever we say the words, it's not for me, but it's not for me.
Why is it not for you? Because I get it with Hayley. We know it's not for Hayley, right? We can see that one a mile off, right? Or a huge Bake Off fan, for instance, right?
Yeah, of the nicher and more posher, the more BBC4 it is, therefore the more better it is. The thing that sort of grates me is just the fact that this show is so deliberately down market in a way. It does have those moments that are hilarious, like for example Victoria Derbyshire last night making an observation whilst looking at somebody's cleavage to make sure there's no bugs in it was really British TV. I've never seen anything more British, particularly when she was reading, like whilst commenting on this, she was just happening to speak like a BBC News presenter in a sort of BBC News voice, which was very, very surreal. But at the same time, I feel that the show is dragged down for being 1 hour 40. I don't like the use of animals being used as entertainment. Hayley and I have discussed this before, and it just feels like quite a tired format. I know that they've moved it to the UK because of circumstances, but this is still a show that I think if they thought of today, it wouldn't have ever made to air. It only really runs because of the previous years and because of the nostalgia of the show. You know, it's one of those, that's why it's become this big hit. But I just think that this whole thing of seeing celebrities being tortured just feels a bit weird and a bit passé, just to me. But yeah, I watched it last night, all of it, and I'll probably keep an eye on the rest of the series for those little moments.
Why 12 million? And I guess, how does that compare to the opening episode from, I don't know, last year or the year before?
So I think this is such a big year for traditional linear TV. So for example, Gogglebox has its most watched episodes ever in its whole run. The most recent series of Bake Off, when it started on Channel 4, made Channel 4 reach its highest rating since the 1980s. I'm a Celebrity is up 1.5 million. And of course, that show has faced so many different challenges. I think that there's something that when we are all alone or when we're all by ourselves, having TV, knowing that other people around the country are watching it as well, provides two things. One, it's a distraction from the news, but two, it's that kind of companionship that we know other people around are watching it, so therefore you'd like to be a part of it. Yeah. And that's something that Netflix and all the others can't provide, and I think it's something that is really special about TV.
Well, we don't have that kind of companionship in any other form of life at the moment, do we? I mean, we can't congregate to watch bands, we can't congregate really in groups of more than 6 down at, well, no, we can't congregate at all down a pub at the moment, so certainly not in England.
Scott, do you think it would have been as long-running and popular if social media, if Twitter didn't exist the way it does? Because you join in with all the talk about the series, even though you're not a fan. It seems to be this collective national conversation.
Exactly, and I think it's something that is very sort of present in Love Island. I imagine that would have Love Island really have become the massive hit? Because part of that feeling of watching it sometimes is that feeling of feeling superior to everyone who's being in it, and you just want to be a bit braggy or find the funniest line, and everyone's trying to be a comedian on Twitter. So I sort of see that without
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I think without that social media element, it probably wouldn't have had the drive that it has. And that's why you've seen so many Netflix shows. There's rumours, actually, that Netflix might be launching an online streaming channel, so scheduling in a lot of their shows. They're doing this trial so far in France to try to go and see whether that thing works. But I think it's because they kind of need to have that engagement for some of their shows. Because some of their reality shows, like Too Hot to Handle, I think relies upon those snarky comments that we all make.
Did Mo Farah, because I've just read this tweet, and if it's true, it's absolutely brilliant. Did Mo Farah say that he was doing I'm a Celeb to make his wife and kids proud?
I don't remember that, no. Okay. I'm going to say yes, why not? But that's probably not the right answer, is it? It sounds like something he would say.
It's just that after winning Olympic gold, you would think that hanging out with Shane Ritchie in a castle in Wales probably wasn't the thing that would make his wife and kids proud more.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that. I mean, this is what...
We should have a word with his wife and kids.
Well,
how much do you want from him?
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. I'm over the whole Olympics thing, but what's Vernon Kay up to? I mean, you haven't hung out in a castle in Wales with him, have you? And Mo goes, oh, God, all right, no, you're right, I haven't done that. I better go and see if ITV, who they're putting together, Prime Celeb. This is someone called Eve who tweeted this 17 hours ago. Not Mo Farah saying he's doing I'm a Celeb to make his wife and kids proud, as if he hasn't literally won the Olympics before. It's a fair point that Eve has made on Twitter there. Okay, so let's see what week 2, week 3, week 4 brings in terms of the numbers, I guess.
Yeah.
See whether it can maintain that level of...
So it lost 5 million over last year's run. I think people found it lacking something. The year before had Harry Redknapp and Emily Atack. And of course, we had Emily Atack on a couple of weeks ago because she's now gone on to make an ITV2 show. So it's interesting. And like we said, Strictly has had so many challenges thrown against it. We've, of course, had Nicola and Katya having to leave, Anton being a temporary judge, Ryland having to self-isolate as well. There are challenges of putting a show in light of having this current lockdown. And of course, Wales has only come out of circuit break.
Anyway, okay, we'll come back. We've got lots more to talk about, including Small Axe, which is his series of 5 films that the Oscar-winning director Steve McQueen has made for the BBC. We'll talk about that and other things, including The Good Lord Bird. I'm intrigued about The Good Lord Bird after we get the headlines at 31 minutes past 3 with Anna Hodges.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Clinical trials in the US indicate that a second company has produced a vaccine that can prevent infections with COVID-19 in more than 90% of cases. The American company Moderna says it hopes to produce up to 1 billion doses by the end of next year. A senior officer at the British Transport Police has accepted the force let the public down on the night of the Manchester Arena attack. While giving evidence at the inquiry, Assistant Chief Constable Sean O'Callaghan agreed mistakes were made. Boris Johnson's among 7 Conservative MPs who are having to self-isolate after a meeting on Thursday. The Prime Minister said he was feeling fine after spending about 35 minutes with Tory MP Lee Anderson, who later tested positive for coronavirus. And one of Britain's biggest toy retailers is warning people not to leave their Christmas shopping until last minute because of problems with supply chains. The chairman of The Entertainer says the pandemic and issues with Brexit are causing product shortages and shipping delays. Now with the sport, here's Delith Lloyd.
And let's check in at the ATP Tour Finals where the world number 1 Novak Djokovic has just got off to the perfect start. Russell Fuller, good timing there.
Perfect timing. It was a shaky start if you examine the first few games of the match, but having immediately cancelled out an early loss of serve, this was ultimately a very polished performance by Novak Djokovic. The world number 1 now has 6 wins out of 6 in his career against Diego Schwartzman, the Argentine making his debut. Djokovic winning this opening round-robin match for the pair of them 6-3, 6-2 in just an hour and 18 minutes. The other 2 players in this group, Daniil Medvedev, who recently won the Paris Masters Masters, and Alex Zverev, the champion here in 2018, meet in the evening match. That's on 5 Live Sports Extra from 8.
Thank you very much, Russell. Russell, our tennis correspondent there. Novak Djokovic then getting off to a great win, a straight sets win over Diego Schwartzman. Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have had their Wrexham takeover bid overwhelmingly approved by the National League Club Supporters Trust. The two actors have left this message on social media.
To the Wrexham Supporters Trust, thank you for your faith and trust in us. We are humbled and we're already getting to work. This is really happening.
Out of more than 2,000 trust members eligible to vote, 1,809 approved, only 26 were against and 9 abstained. Now the Republic of Ireland will be without Tottenham's Matt Doherty and Stoke City's James McLean for Wednesday's Nations League match against Bulgaria. The pair have tested positive for COVID-19 and are now self-isolating. The FA of Ireland say all their staff, though, and the other players tested negative before flying back to Dublin from Wales. The BBC has announced that the FA Cup second round tie between Tranmere Rovers and Brackley Town will be shown live on BBC Two on Friday the 27th of November. 15 other ties will also be broadcast across BBC platforms over the same weekend. Now, 9 months out from next year's rearranged Olympic Games in Tokyo, and President of the IOC Thomas Bach has reiterated his confidence that spectators will be allowed into events. Bach hopes the Games will be the light at the end of what he's called a black tunnel.
We will be able to take the right tools out in order to ensure a safe environment for all participants in the Games. And this makes us also very
title victory. 5 Live will bring you an hour-long special at 9 this evening, asking whether the Briton is the greatest ever Formula One driver. The former Ferrari driver Felipe Massa reckons his old teammate Michael Schumacher, whose record Hamilton has equalled, will be pleased.
I think he will be happy. This for somebody that really deserves it, and I think he really will appreciate what's happening, because this is the life. This is sport, and I think after when you finish your career, I think you really look in a different way. So I think he will be happy.
Wigan captain Sean O'Loughlin is fit for Thursday's Super League playoff semi-final against Hull, but is not guaranteed a place in the team. That's according to coach Adrian Lamb. O'Loughlin, who's made only 6 appearances so far this year, said last week he plans to retire at the end of the season. That's the latest for now from BBC Sport.
Available now on BBC Sounds.
Welcome to The Players, the podcast that flips the script on how we talk football.
I know in my mind, and I'm very clear what do I have to do.
I've experienced a lot of stuff that no one should ever experience.
I'm passing the mic to those who know it best, the players themselves.
We are expected to win. Our federation, our country expects that from us.
What really goes on and off the pitch.
Why did I put the cowboy hat on?
I'm Beck Smith, and this is The Players. Subscribe on BBC Sounds.
Must watch the best new TV and streaming shows every week. BBC Radio 5 Live.
So let's get into Download, which is the part of Must Watch where we recommend things that you can binge on right now on demand. Try watching Game of Thrones seasons 1 to 8 for the 3rd time. And we always want your recommendations on email, mustwatch@bbc.co.uk. By the way, it may put some strain on your marriage if you do decide to do that. Text 85058 or tweet at BBC5Live, especially when you've got to get kids to school and your only excuse is, but I was watching Game of Thrones. But who's the one with the White Walkers?
I wonder if that's ever been actual grounds.
Sorry, go on. Hayley, go on, what did you just say?
I was just wondering if, I have to watch this TV show has ever actually been grounds for divorce.
Well, you may find out in a few weeks. If I start watching it for the 3rd time, you'll almost certainly find out in a few weeks. Scott, what were you going to say, my friend?
I was just trying to sort of back off on a joke as well and be like, what a great hypothetical situation that you had just thought up for yourself there.
It'll be written in a script at some point. Now, we've got Simon from Bolton on the phone now who wants to recommend something to us. Hi, Simon. Hello, Simon.
No. Yes, I wanted to recommend The Block on Amazon Prime.
What is The Block all about, Simon?
Okay, so think of it as kind of a hybrid, mutated mix of Big Brother and changing rooms. Give it a big caffeinated drink and then shake it and then watch everything implode. It's kind of got backstabbing, collusion, splinter group packs, all working towards sort of renovating a block of dilapidated apartments, usually in Australia, with budgets most Channel 5 dramas would be jealous of, to be honest. And the aim is to try and make as much money as possible over the reserve price. If that happens, they get to keep the profit. But the reality of reality estate, I suppose, means that some leave with literally $0 and others can leave with £400,000. It's brilliantly gripping. There's like 19 series, and I think we've ingested about 15 of them over about 3 weeks. But you have to give up like weeks at a time because they're 49 episodes, but they're usually an hour long. And it's just gripping stuff. I've never been so fascinated with hammers and nails in my life.
So it sounds worth getting divorced over.
Wait a minute. So let's just go into the numbers of this again, Simon.
Yes.
How many seasons?
There's been 19 seasons. It's Australia's most popular factual entertainment.
Well, because it's never off the TV, presumably. It's the only thing you can watch. How many episodes per season?
Once you get really into the chunky series of them, the first one started out and it was 8 episodes, 8 1 hours, which is great. Now they're up to 49 episodes per season.
No, that's too many. That's too many. That should be illegal.
Simon, how do you eat? I mean, do you just eat through a tube intravenously?
Yeah, literally. I've just got a tube that's a hosepipe coming from the fridge straight into my stomach.
And have your friends, family seen you recently, even on a Zoom call, or you?
They've only seen me when I've changed from my night pajamas to my day pajamas.
Day pajamas are great, by the way. They're really good.
So so like Howard Hughes, you've got these kind of curly fingernails and toenails, just watching The Block. You've disappeared into this world.
I'm just displaying male pattern baldness, but what hair I do have, I've managed to plait.
Sounds okay. So this is reality TV. Yes, this isn't a drama. Although there's a lot of drama.
Reality TV writ large. It's 4 couples, usually couples that are together, that basically sign themselves up to renovate a dilapidated. And now the last block that I saw, I mean, the budget must have been running to maybe $5 million because of the amount of sponsorship they have, the amount of equipment. £200,000 on fridges. £200,000.
So they do this to scale. I mean, they're not mucking about, are they, Simon?
Oh, this isn't, putting up some floating shelves in the old teapot. This is literally renovating an entire building.
I'm sold.
I love that
phenomenal.
I love that sort of reference to the Linda Barker teapot disaster from Changing Rooms, by the way, which is an
Thank you very much.
iconic.
I'm doffing my cap and tucking my forelock to you right now.
This is why Scott Bryant's here to pick up on those references. That was obscure. So, Simon, The Block on Amazon Prime. Yeah, that's what we should. I'm sold. I don't know about you two, but I am sold.
I'm sold as well. Totally sold.
Yeah, and
You'll be wearing Kleenex boxes on your feet in no time.
I know,
now.
right? And thinking germs are everywhere. Simon, have you finished all 19 seasons now?
We are now going back and revisiting some of the seasons that maybe we didn't. Maybe we kind of chatted over them. We're just now going to be pure blinkered vision, and we'll probably get some reality goggles and just sit together, but not talk to each other while we watch it as it's strapped to our faces.
The true spirit of download.
Oh my God, Simon! I want you to review something every week, and this is brilliant. Do you? Can you? Because I'm not sure I have time. In fact, I don't think many people on planet Earth, other than yourself, does have time for this. So can you? Is there a shortcut? Is there a season X, episode X that you think we should go to as a kind of starting point?
Yes, your starting point should definitely be season 2.
No, reclusiveness, I think I was looking for.
Well, daytime pyjamas.
Yeah, exactly, daytime pyjamas.
Plaid tartan.
Oh, wow, mate, you're living the dream. Simon, thank you. Simon from Bolton there, who's recommended The Block on Amazon. That sounds extraordinary. I need that.
I'm out of a job now.
He was good. He was good. I think we're all out of a job with Simon from Bolton. He was superb. Okay, let's now go... Wow, I feel like we've had the headliner. Let's go for some of the support acts with Scott and Hayley now for download. Scott, what do you have?
So this is the show that surprised me, like the series that happened before. Also on Amazon, it's called James May Oh Cook. And it's a cookery show presented by James May, which might not sound like the most riveting thing at the moment. But what's a real surprise is that he's now, along with the Grand Tour stuff, making individual stuff for Amazon. And he's doing the style...
Took enough money from him, right? Yeah.
Contractually obliged. Yeah. But the shows are actually really good because what he does is he completely takes apart the structure of how a cookery show gets made. So for example, he makes this recipe and then you see the spinning plates that on every other show exists. For example, Nigella or whatever, you'd see the spinning plate get put together. And it's an interesting take into how these shows get put together. But I also admire the fact that he isn't that much of a big chef. He's very much in there every day. He's learning along with everyone else. And I'm finding that sometimes with cookery shows, at least for me anyway, there's a lack of accessibility, that it either goes for something that's ridiculously hard or flamboyant or show-offy, rather than just the essentials, the basics, or things that go beyond your own repertoire. I dig myself into a repertoire of cooking that I finally, even now, don't really go that much beyond. And he kind of gave the soul sort of encouragement to try something a little bit different, and if it fails, oh well. Okay. So I quite like it. It's James May, Oh Cook, and all the episodes are on Amazon Prime Video.
And Hayley, what do you have? This is interesting. Back in the days, Hayley, I think you had a fractious relationship with Now TV. Mm-hmm. But it seems that not a week goes by now without you recommending something from Now TV.
It's not my fault that they have good shows. They just have a bad platform.
Okay. Good shows. Okay. All right. Okay. Came for the platform, stayed for the shows.
Yeah. So this week, I've been watching Deadwood on Now TV, and I was in the mood to
we all did. Yeah.
I was in the mood to rewatch Deadwood after we reviewed The Mandalorian a couple of weeks back.
Okay.
Because that first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian was like a Deadwood Star Wars crossover.
Okay.
Because Timothy Oliphant was in it. And it had that Star Wars has that Western feel.
Indeed.
And it just felt like I was watching a strange parallel universe Deadwood episode. So I went back, and this is the first time I've watched it since it came out. And it's astonishing how much they managed to fit into that one episode, the first one, and how brilliantly it's written. And it's even better than I remember it being. I will say that annoyingly, do you remember how a Deadwood movie came out quite recently?
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen because I was going to rewatch the whole TV show and then go into that. I was hoping they would have the TV show have the movie on here as well, and they don't for platform reasons. Okay. So that is a sad thing. But Now TV does have all 3 seasons.
Cool. Let's move on.
Yeah. So the brilliant Oscar-winning film director Steve McQueen, he made 12 Years a Slave, Hunger, Shame. He's now made an anthology series of 5 films, collectively called Small Acts, and they're all set between the late 60s and the mid-80s. And it's a treat to get a new Steve McQueen movie in any year, but to get 5 that we can all watch at home in the middle of lockdown is amazing. We're just spoiled. So 4 of the stories are true, 1 is imagined, and the first one, which was shown last night, is called Mangrove. Now, they're all stories of hard-won victories in the face of racism, and Mangrove focuses on this one restaurant in Notting Hill, the people who ran it, and the police who would not leave it alone. They kept raiding it. The Old Bailey trial of the Mangrove Nine, who were accused of inciting a riot, became the first judicial acknowledgement of behavior motivated by racial hatred. in the Metropolitan Police. So it's about this big trial. Here is a clip from the courtroom featuring Barbara Beese, played by Line of Duty's Rashenda Sandal, courtesy of Emu Films, Turbine Studios, and BBC and Amazon Studios.
What were you holding?
A placard that said, "Hands off black people." And then a man came and snatched it away from me. A white man, tall and heavily built. He looked like a lunatic. I asked him what the hell he thought he was doing, but he just broke the placard over his knee, so I tried to get it back from him.
You tried to get it back from him, even though, as you say, he looked like a lunatic?
Not afraid of loons. Been surrounded by them all my life.
So you attacked the man?
No, I did not. Before I knew it, I was being arrested.
Did you resist arrest?
Of course I resisted arrest. Done nothing wrong, had I?
Wow. I know that Hayley thinks this is a must-watch because she used the word brilliant. Oscar-winning
a couple
film
of times,
director.
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I love Steve McQueen.
She didn't
He's
say
so
the
good.
once brilliant or usually brilliant. She just said brilliant. Scott, I'll ask you first. Is it a must-watch?
Absolutely. I'd say this is probably one of the best dramas of the year on TV. I was initially anxious because this is the longest show that Hayley and I think have ever had to review a must-watch. 2 hours, 10 minutes long.
127 minutes.
Yes.
127. But I think every single scene is necessary. Every single character is brilliant. The message, the meaning behind it, the fact that it opens millions of people up to this story that they have never been taught before, never been shown before, but done it in a way which is full of heart, full of compassion, and also it's a story from 50 years ago that feels utterly relevant to where we are now. And I was listening to you earlier today, Nahal, where you were speaking to people who have also seen this film, and it's the same on me. I felt embarrassed for not knowing the story beforehand, and it makes me realise the importance of our education system, but also TV, in showing a spotlight on such stories that need to be told, because TV is an important educator in letting people know the stuff that they should really know about. And this story, I mean, the last 20 minutes of it, because it turns into a courtroom drama, completely and utterly floored me. I've never, when a drama is good, where you look at a drama's bad, or you think it's dragging when you're watching something long and you're looking at that cursor on the bottom of the screen, being a bit like, oh, where are we? Oh, we've got an hour left or so forth. This is the first time that I pressed play and I got to the end and I didn't even realise that 2 hours had passed.
True, actually. Oh, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Did go. So, Hayley, what did you think?
I love it. It's great. And I love that McQueen deliberately wanted to make these stories accessible by not putting them on streaming services. He's put it on the BBC because he wants as many people to see it as possible. And I thought it was a great, powerful piece of work. And a thing I love about McQueen is he lets scenes run long and he doesn't cut if he thinks it will diffuse a moment. So there are long scenes here where other things are happening out of shot, but all we can see is one person's face. And there's a bit of the courtroom that he used this brilliantly, and it highlighted not just the emotional tension of what was happening, but everything that was riding on that one moment. And it also showed us how brilliant the cast was. Sean Parks, who plays Critchlow, the restaurant owner, is really good. His character, he doesn't want to be an activist, he just wants to be left alone, but he's forced into this situation. And if you look at the whole cast, it's brilliant. And it's also starkly noticeable that so many of these brilliant actors haven't had starring roles before. So we're seeing the kind of cast we don't tend to see in lush dramas like that, but we're also hearing them. I loved hearing all of these accents that I hear in London every day, but I rarely see them or hear them on the screen. These old Trinidadian ladies, talking to each other. It's so full of beautiful life, and it's full of anger and frustration as well, but there's so much love and life in it. And I would say that if you're interested in this, do have a look at Steve McQueen's guest edit of the Observer new review yesterday. It's all up online, and there are some great interviews with Black British artists, and they're all talking about big thoughts and what's happening in the world right now and where we're going. And also, Shane Meadows asks McQueen if he likes chip shop gravy. And McQueen says he's never tried it before. And I thought that was very strange.
That is weird.
What a note to end on your brilliant review, Hayley.
In the south. Is it? I never came across gravy with chips.
Yeah?
In London?
You do get it in East London where I live. You get them in these tiny little selection, like a tiny little pot. But when I was in Glasgow, it was practically like a dumpster truck had just tipped over into my fish and chips full of gravy. It really depends where you are.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't think I would allow him that because I'm not sure that's a common thing.
Okay.
Dan Saff.
We'll allow Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
That.
If that's the thing, I mean, I don't want you to boycott the remaining 4 films on this culinary philistine.
These films made by a man who hasn't had gravy.
Yeah, exactly. Outrageous.
What
anyway,
does he know of the world?
Exactly right. You can watch Small Axe Mangrove on BBC iPlayer. Small Axe continues with a new film Sunday, 22nd of November on BBC One at 9 p.m. So, what is our final review, Hayley?
This one, it's The Good Lord Bird, which is a slightly mad new 7-part series starring Ethan Hawke, based on the novel by James McBride. It's told from the point of view of Henry, who is a fictionalized, enslaved boy who, for complicated reasons, is wearing a dress and goes by the name of Onion. He ends up being part of John Brown's gang of abolitionist soldiers who famously failed to initiate a slave revolt, but did manage to start the Civil War. Let's hear the trailer.
Everybody got God on their side in the war. Trouble is, God ain't telling nobody who he's for.
My name is Captain John Brown! And I am here in the name of the great King of Kings! The Holy Redeemer! The Man of Trinity! 'Cause he is on the side of justice! And you are on the side of change!
Okay, I've got to ask this question. Does Ethan Hawke just shout at me throughout the whole thing?
Yep. He shouts 2/3 of the opening episode, I'd say. So
Lots
of
of Bible
shouting.
verses.
Loads of Bible verses.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I'm in the mood for someone shouting at me.
No,
Would you
this is one of
watch-
those that you have to be in a mood for.
Would you watch this show, Nahal, or would you watch Industry about those city bankers that had to live and work in those financial institutions in the heart of London? If you had to pick and choose which show to invest all of your hard-earned time in, what one would you choose?
Well, that's like choosing between vomit and pus, isn't it? Let's see.
Industry's good. Industry is good. I've said this before. It's really good.
Yeah, I know. Oh, David Diggs was on the show, actually. He's playing. He was in Hamilton, wasn't he, David Diggs? Who's in this? I just can't. I mean, that trailer was so annoying. Yeah.
It is.
I don't know if I really want to do it. Okay, so just tell us about this then. Is it a must-watch, Hayley?
I kind of liked it. It's funny in a sort of Quentin Tarantino, Coen Brothers sort of way.
Okay.
You know, in that way they focus on the absurdity and the little domestic details of these strange situations. And it's violent. It's hugely violent, but not in a way that I think glamorizes it. The violence is always an act of madness that our hero, Onion, winces at. And the real life version of John Brown, who's played by Ethan Hawke here, was very violent, and that is what is talked about when people talk about John Brown. But he said that it was the only way there would be an end to slavery, and he said that signing petitions and trying to talk people around to his way of thinking was never going to get anywhere. So he's violent in this, but sort of cartoonishly so, in a sort of, this is my task sent from God, and I will recite the Bible while I'm doing it sort of way. So it's, in real life he tried to arm the slaves to fight with him, but they sort of stood back and thought that he was crazy. And in this, he does look crazy. He was the first person to be executed for treason in the States, and his trial, which was covered by the press across the country, escalated the tensions, and then the Civil War started. So it's an interesting point in history, and it's a kind of mad comedic take on it, I thought.
Okay, just before we move on to that, of course chip shop gravy is a thing in the South. It's disgusting, but most definitely a thing, says Hayley. Presumably not you. Susie in Bow, of course, East London, says, Nihal, I'm a South East Londoner and I've always had chips with curry sauce. Okay, gravy has always been an option. Where have you been? I don't know, in Northwest London, that wasn't a thing. Essex wasn't a thing.
Curry sauce is great.
Salt and vinegar.
Chips.
Yeah, curry sauce is the one.
So good.
Curry sauce is the one. Definitely. Over that. Nihal, the block is brilliant. Start on Series 4 and then enjoy the penthouses and stuff at auction for 3 million plus. It is great, says someone on the text. Okay. And someone else just loving that as well. Scott, what did you think of the good Lord Shouty Bird?
I found it impenetrable. I had no idea what was going on.
Never
pretty much at any point. I normally find that a TV show can go into a subject.
Prison.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
and it's a really good review.
It's a great review. But it's the case that like they just go straight into this. I knew a bit about John Brown, not really that much. There's not that much of an introduction. They go right to the heart of the matter, and that can be great as a show. But if you don't have any prerequisite knowledge, I've always been a firm believer of if you have to Google what on earth is going on within the first 5 minutes of a show to understand what is the context.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be all explained matter of fact in detail, because that can be a bit annoying, but you want there to be some cues so you know what's going on. I found this to be so hard. I rewatched the opening bit about 3 times and I still didn't get it.
The first 2 episodes of The Good Lord Bird are available to watch from the 18th of November on Sky Atlantic at 9 p.m. You can also watch episodes on Now TV and Sky On Demand. Scott and Hayley, as always, lovely to see you, lovely to hear from you. It's now time for Drive with Anna and Tony.
Cheers, Nihal. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. More potential good news around COVID. Another vaccine reports 95% success rates.
And if you've been living on the games console, or maybe your kids have in the last few months, good news. There's a study that says apparently playing video games makes us happier, so we'll talk more about that before 4:30 as well.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 4 o'clock. This is James Kelly. Public health experts have welcomed the news that a second vaccine appears to work well at preventing the spread of coronavirus. The US drugs company, Moderna, says its vaccine is almost 95% effective. The government here is currently in discussions with Moderna, which says it could provide substantial stocks of the vaccine by spring. Dr. Mary Ramsey, head of immunisation at Public Health England, says older people are likely to be offered the jab first.
The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation has decided who would be the most priority, and that starts with the elderly and people in care homes. But obviously, if something comes up that the vaccine works differently in different age groups, that may need to be modified.
Boris Johnson says he's feeling fit and well as he self-isolates for the next 10 days. The Prime Minister is among 7 Conservative MPs who are working from home after a meeting on Thursday. One of those at the meeting, the MP Lee Anderson, later tested positive for COVID-19. Our political correspondent Helen Katz says Mr Johnson is still able to work in his office.
Boris Johnson now confined to within Downing Street, but actually not entirely to his flat. He is working in his office so that he can fulfil his duties. Now, we understand the reason he's doing that is that they found a way of him walking from the flat to the office without meeting any staff and back again, and that they took medical advice from medical experts on this, and they have approved that.
A senior British Transport Police officer has acknowledged that the force let down the public on the night of the Manchester Arena bombing. The inquiry into the attack heard from Assistant Chief Constable Sean O'Callaghan, who said there'd been no officers in the foyer where Salman Abedi detonated his explosives. An inquest into the deaths of 5 people from Cornwall who died from carbon monoxide poisoning has heard all of them had used gas cookers produced by the parent company of Beko. In a statement, the company said it was satisfied it had met all necessary safety standards. 2 people died 10 years ago. 3 members of another family died in 2013. Sarah Ransom reports.
Kevin Branton and his housemate Richard Smith, both in their 30s, were found dead in their house in Saltash in November 2010. A previous inquest heard the grill on their cooker had produced high levels of carbon monoxide. 3 years later, husband and wife John and Audrey Cook and their 47-year-old daughter Maureen died at their static caravan in Camborne. An inquest today heard all 5 had died from carbon monoxide poisoning and used gas cookers produced by the parent company of Beko. In a statement to the hearing, the company said product safety was its primary consideration and all its appliances were fully tested before going onto the market.
Sweden has announced a drastic reduction in the number of people allowed to meet in public in response to a surge in coronavirus infections. From Tuesday, gatherings of more than 8 will be forbidden. Sweden has shunned lockdowns in its approach to the virus. That's the BBC News at 3 minutes past 4.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
In travel news, we'll start with the M8 westbound at junction 27 for Paisley. Because of an accident, one lane is blocked and traffic is queuing back to junction 26 at Hillington. Dundee, the A92 East Dock Street, both directions near the Tay Road Bridge. Because of a police incident, the road is currently closed. It's causing some very heavy congestion in the area. The M42 southbound at junction 9 at Coeshill. Because of an accident, one lane is closed. Congestion back to junction 10 at Tamworth. The northbound side also extra busy because of that. The M25 clockwise at junction 25 with the A10. There's a breakdown blocking one lane on the exit slip. That's causing delays. And Essex, the A12 southbound between junction 28 and 27, the Avenue of Remembrance roundabout. There's an accident there. The road is partially blocked and it's causing queues. Michelle Dignan, Back Live Travel.
Michelle, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm told we have a caller on the line. Anna, I've never heard of her. Hello.
1 week. Hello. 1 week I'm gone. And yeah, do you know, it's hello. Well, it's nice to be back. Obviously, you don't get to see me properly yet because I'm still in quarantine.
That's a ruse, just so you don't have to give me my gift.
Well, I genuinely, I've got a gift. Yeah. It may or may not last till the time I make it back to the studio. No, I'm at home, so I've got me slippers on, and I'm wearing a very, very old fleece, which I think used to have a colour at some point, but it's kind of beige now, and it sort of feels it's as comfortable as being back in your presence after a week away.
How very last of the summer wine.
It is rather, yes. No, I do feel a bit compo in it. I just need the hat.
Well, we've a lot to get through today. You'll be very familiar with what's happening at 5 o'clock. We have a government press conference today. It won't be Boris Johnson for obvious reasons, although he is doing PMQs virtually on Wednesday, but he's handed the mantle to Matt Hancock today at 5 o'clock, so we'll hear that, and I presume they'll be talking about another vaccine which has produced very good results today. Last time it was Pfizer-BioNTech, now it's the American firm Moderna who say that their jab is nearly 95% effective. You remember, Pfizer was saying 90%. Well, this one they say is 95%, and could be available by Christmas. Although the UK government doesn't have any orders with this vaccine, they say it won't be available until next spring anyway. And there's another UK vaccine in the pipeline. Lots to talk about in just a moment. Anna, there's loads elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I mean, what is interesting later in the programme, I want to flag this up to you now because we got a conversation for you. You might remember we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement on the programme a few months ago, and Sophie phoned in. Now, she's only 17, but she was just finally learning, really, and starting to educate herself about racism, about everything that's gone on for hundreds of years. So we got her together with Dominique Walker, who's also been on the programme in the last few months. Now, her brother, Anthony, was murdered in Huyton on Merseyside back in 2005, and she has dedicated her life to being an anti-racism campaigner. She was in the police, now she lectures in Liverpool, and we put the two of them together for a conversation because, you know, there's so much that Sophie wants to know, she wants to learn as a white girl of 17 years old. So we put them together and they chatted at length, and it was just the most fascinating conversation with maybe questions that you want answers to as well and didn't have anybody to ask. So you'll get to hear that later in the programme. It's well worth your time, I promise.
Yes, and on a different note altogether, some of you may have seen this video on social media after Scotland reached the European Championships the other day.
I'm sure Nicky Campbell's in the middle of that crowd somewhere.
Yeah, more tuneful than the original, actually. Yeah. That was the Scottish team singing Yes Sir I Can Boogie. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit later in the programme, but the reason they were doing it then was one of the players dressed as a woman and had it on his stag do and actually produced a pop video. So that was the connection. What I wondered today, or what we were thinking, was what weird connection do you have to a song? You've carried it through your life, you've got a song that whenever it comes on, but it has to be a weird connection, like your husband dressed as a woman for his stag do, that kind of thing. So what song have you got a weird connection to? We might
niche.
It is niche. It is
yeah,
niche. But
I like niche, though.
I think it would be a fruitful niche as opposed to a dead-end niche, hopefully. So if you can help us out on that, let us know. The song and the reason why, don't just send a list of songs in 85058 at BBC 5 Live.
BBC 5 Live.
Laura Whitmore.
Hi, this is Kylie Minogue, and you're listening to Laura Whitmore on BBC 5 Live. I'm pretty sure I thought this is what I want to do, or just at least, fantasized about it. But the first concert I went to was Culture Club, and I went with all the ribbons in my hair, my 14-year-old version of Boy George. My kind of disco dream, or my dream of singing, was in my head and in my heart.
Laura Whitmore. Listen now with the BBC Sounds app. This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Tony Livesey and Anna Foster.
Potentially very important news from another company manufacturing a vaccine against COVID-19. It follows that announcement last week from Pfizer and BioNTech, with early data suggesting that their vaccine could protect more than 90% of people from developing COVID symptoms.
Well, today, hot on their heels, the American firm Moderna has said that they've developed a jab that's nearly 95% effective, and it's easier to store. Doesn't need to be kept as cold. You can keep it in a normal freezer. The UK is now apparently in advanced negotiations to secure a supply of that vaccine.
Yes, Moderna expects to have 20 million doses ready by the end of the year. The company's president, Dr. Stephen Hogue, said he grinned ear to ear when the results came in.
Obviously, we're thrilled. It's been a long year for many of us, and at our company, it's been a long, hard slog to get to the point where we now have clear evidence of efficacy of the vaccine to prevent COVID-19 disease. There was a moment of pretty intense relief, but that quickly passed. After about a minute, it became a realization that now that we know the vaccine works, we have to get busy to work manufacturing it and distributing it. But clearly an important milestone and a great milestone for us as a company, and hopefully for us more generally as we fight this pandemic.
Meanwhile, a major new trial of yet another vaccine has been launched here in the UK, this time designed by the Belgian company Janssen. Our health reporter, Michelle Roberts, joins us. Hello, Michelle.
Hello there.
The race is really on now, isn't it? And another company pushing itself to the front. When do we think any one of these vaccines might be available? And is it likely, Michelle, that in the future there's going to be a mixture of vaccines available? It won't be one that dominates.
So you're right that it will be a mixture of vaccines, and it depends when they come on board. I mean, there are lots now that are getting towards the final step where you need all the data to send off to regulators. So we've heard from Pfizer, BioNTech and now Moderna today, who are edging towards that goalpost, and it appears that the data they have at this point is very promising. We also know the Oxford vaccine, we're expecting results from that fairly soon. Once we get final results, so we need a few more weeks yet to get those from Pfizer and Moderna, then regulators will be able to tell if it's safe and effective enough to go ahead and start saying, yep, let's give it to people in the wider population.
I noticed the Russians, their vaccine, they say it's 92% effective as well. It's hard, Michelle, though, not to look at all this through the prism of how many doses has the UK got on order, because we talk about Pfizer, there are sort of 40 million in the pipeline there, none with the Moderna project, but so it's the Oxford University AstraZeneca one which would be the big payoff for the UK, wouldn't it? 100 million doses ordered. Do we know how far that is down the line, and have we any clues at all about how successful it might be?
So we are getting close to getting some interim results. As you say, 100 million of the Oxford pre-ordered, 40 million of the Pfizer pre-ordered. When those could actually physically arrive and start to be used is a different matter. So if everything goes well, the Pfizer jab, there might be some of that before Christmas. Hard to know with the Oxford vaccine yet whether we could get doses of that too.
We have the director of the Vaccine Centre at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine on in just a second, so I don't expect you to go into the technical details, Michelle, but we can't just automatically assume at the Oxford University vaccine will have the same levels of success because they've used slightly different methods, haven't they? And these 6 or so vaccines in the race are all quite different. Well, I say that, Moderna, I think, and Pfizer are similar, but the others are different.
There are lots of ways to crack a nut, and I mean that's the whole point of looking at different vaccines. Hopefully some of them will work better in different groups than others, but all of them will work. That's what the real hope is. Some of them may not. They may fall at the final hurdle, but ultimately the ambition is to get a vaccine, at least one, hopefully lots, that can help the people most at risk. So the very high-risk patients, which are elderly people in care homes, people with pre-existing health conditions, and also protect healthcare workers that are looking after the very sick people. So if we can get something like that, that would be wonderful. Then there's still the big question mark over whether a vaccine could stop people spreading
Yes. More about that with our next guest in a second. Just a final one to you, Michelle. Boris Johnson self-isolating at the moment, but we know he's already had COVID. The man on the street or the woman on the street might think, well, if you've already had it, why self-isolate if the odds are you won't get it again? What's the theory here?
Well, those are the rules, and they're there for a reason. Obviously, somebody who's had the infection before should hopefully have some immunity to that virus now. But we don't know how long that immunity lasts. And that's the critical thing. I mean, if there's any chance, if they're not sick themselves, and we know that people can be asymptomatic, have no symptoms, even though they are infectious, then that's the way to stop the spread, by just imposing the self-isolation period.
OK, Michelle, thank you. Our health reporter, Michelle Roberts. Well, I did say our next guest was approaching, the director of the Vaccine Centre at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. It's Professor Beate Kampmann. Hello, welcome to the programme.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, Tony.
Hi. We have to kind of rein ourselves in on days like this when we see more good news that could potentially change the way we live our lives. But is there any downside at all to this announcement today from Moderna, do we think? On the face of it, for controlling COVID, another step forward, do we think, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can be positive about the second announcement of interim results of a large-scale efficacy trial. Last week we had Pfizer, this week we have Moderna. And both are based on this RNA technology, which is, a new technology where hopefully not just for this vaccine, but also for the future of vaccine manufacturing in general, especially for outbreaks, this will be a major leap forward. Now, what we need to be aware of, though, is these news have all been announced through press releases, and they're somewhat preliminary because the critical numbers of cases and safety data that have to be submitted to the regulators haven't yet occurred. However, the news is really promising and the results are very, very similar. And I'm very excited about it. But as Michelle said, we don't know whether it prevents serious illness, whether it prevents transmission, and how long the protection lasts. We don't have much information about the cases of the people who got COVID during the trial, whether they fell into particular age groups or ethnic groups, etc. So there are still quite a lot of questions.
There is, and we will automatically, won't we, become vaccine experts as this goes along because it concerns us all. Can you, in a nutshell, explain this kind of revolutionary technique that Moderna and Pfizer have been implementing? Did you say RNA? Can you explain, simplify for us the process?
Yeah, I'll try. So normally when in the sort of generations of vaccines that we're using weakened forms of the virus or the bacterium, depending which vaccine we're talking about. And we're taking away all the bits of it that would make you sick if you wouldn't want to inject someone with the real measles virus, for example. So it's all what we call attenuated. And sometimes we just use a protein or a sugar coating from this organism and never the whole real organism. Now, what is different here is we don't even use a particle of the what we call the pathogen, the virus or bacterium. We're just using its genetic information. And it's like, you get the instruction manual, but the body itself will then build the critical bits that the immune system has to see to make the antibodies or the T-cell responses. So it's a step more removed from the real organism, and it can't replicate, and it can't make you sick. It's like getting the building blocks delivered rather than what we call the antigen itself.
So if we compare that, just finally, if we compare that to this potential Oxford University virus, which I read is taken from a deactivated chimpanzee cold virus, that would presumably be a more the usual method, would it? So do we think that the ones that have announced already, Beate, may be more sophisticated and therefore the results shouldn't be expected to be the same from Oxford University if they're using more traditional methods?
So it's not even a traditional method, even with what's called an inactivated virus that is looking to use like the bits of information protein from the coronavirus as like a Trojan horse to get in. It's just a different way of getting